Neşe Devenot, and after 3 postdocs and 10 years on the academic job market, I just finished my first year on the faculty at the Johns Hopkins University Writing Program. Since 2010, thank you. Since 2010, I've been a psychedelic researcher because psychedelics saved my life. Back then, most people I met didn't know what psychedelics were. Today, in 2024, I bet some of you have heard of them. Psychedelics are a diverse group of compounds that induce dramatic alterations of consciousness, including changes to perception, cognition, emotion, even sense of identity. Across many cultures and throughout time, psychedelics have been valued for their ability to occasion non-ordinary experiences that are often deeply meaningful and transformative. I still think psychedelics have extraordinary potential for healing and positive change, but during my many years in this field, I learned they also have a dark side, and the way we use them matters. This week, working with a small team of collaborators at Symposia, I organized the successful opposition to the first psychedelic therapy application before the FDA, Lykos Therapeutics' new drug application of MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. Based on everything I just told you, that opposition might seem strange. I didn't challenge this because I don't understand the value of psychedelics. I challenged it because they're so important that we need to get this right. In March 2024, a Lykos whistleblower entrusted me with disturbing allegations about the organization developing this therapy. These allegations included misreporting of serious adverse events in its clinical trials, such as one instance of suicidal behavior during an MDMA dosing session. Combining these accounts with my prior research and personal experience, I realized the company's culture was dangerous, and that this danger was linked to its rigid beliefs about healing. Ultimately, I decided that the new allegations were too serious to keep quiet. If the industry moved forward under these conditions and people ended up getting hurt, I would feel complicit if I didn't say anything. Several of my contacts who have seen problems at Lykos have said they can't speak up publicly due to various vulnerabilities. In my case, for the first time in my life, I have a secure job that is independent of the psychedelic medical industry. And because I could speak up, I felt I had to. Thinking forward to the future, I wanted to know that I did what I could. In wrestling with what to do with that information, I decided to organize a citizen petition to the FDA along with 4 co-authors, including Megan Buisson, my academic colleague and a former Lykos trial participant. We asked the FDA to convene an advisory committee meeting with an extended open public hearing so we could share concerns about the safety and efficacy of Lykos's MDMA-assisted therapy. On May 30th, just over a week ago, the FDA granted our request to extend the open public hearing. In my comments to FDA's advisory committee, I argued that Lykos, at least its inner circle, qualifies as a therapy cult that indoctrinates its therapists and participants into an ideological system of true beliefs. Therapy cults transform therapeutic theories into rigid ideologies that promise reductive solutions for healing. Despite specific patterns of harm, therapy cults encourage their adherents to view themselves as heroes, struggling against ignorant forces to bring enlightenment to humanity. The prospect of a therapy cult guiding a suggestibility-enhancing drug through clinical trials presents unique risks that have never been publicly discussed. The trials should be scrutinized as if Scientology or Nexium had submitted a new drug application to the FDA. This analysis has explanatory power for idiosyncrasies and allegations that are too consistent to be dismissed as hearsay or coincidence. It connects everything from the rosy published outcomes to the organization's internal culture, to the specific nature of the abuses in its clinical trials, to the allegations of data misconduct, to claims that it's more like a religious organization, a religious movement, than a scientific organization. This is how Lykos represents its therapy. This image was published in a press release for its phase 3 clinical trials. Lykos describes its therapy as non-directive and empathetic, but that's actually misleading. It gives the impression of therapists standing by and allowing the patient to lead their own experience. The therapy component matters because everyone agrees that MDMA increases the vulnerability of patients while they're in altered states. Lykos claims its therapy reduces the risk of assault and other violations by teaching therapists the specific psychological intervention used in its clinical trials. In reality, though, this intervention directly contributed to sexual and physical assaults by therapists in those trials. Their actual therapy model is acknowledged in this 2015 paper by founder Rick Doblin. In this paper, Doblin admits that Lykos' entire therapeutic approach is based on Stanislav Grof's spiritual teachings, and that the essence of that treatment approach is a death-rebirth process that often involves reenacting interpersonal trauma. This specific therapy is foundational to Lykos' methodology. While it's not mentioned in any of the briefing documents that Lykos submitted to FDA, it's associated with patterns of harm across Lykos' clinical trials. Lykos' therapy is described more fully in this book, Integral Psychedelic Therapy. 2 of its 3 editors were Lykos trainers and phase 3 therapists, and it was endorsed by prominent members of Lykos' inner circle. In this book, Veronica Gold, a Lykos supervisor, trainer, and phase 3 therapist, describes pinning down a patient as their distress escalated to the point of shouting, quote, "Go away, get your effing hands away from me," end quote. But Gold did not stop pushing. As demonstrated by the many Lykos therapists who endorsed this abusive practice, this is an accepted component of the therapy that Lykos claims is necessary for positive patient outcomes on MDMA. As another therapist stated in the parent company's bulletin, "To process trauma, I think we need the perpetrator to make an appearance during the dosing session." Lykos also claims that the only significant boundary violations in its clinical trials involved a single phase 2 participant, whose assaults were widely reported in the media. Long after that phase 2 participant enlisted the media to draw attention to the dangers of Lykos' therapy, the methods involved in her on-camera physical assault are still explicitly promoted and taught as part of Lykos' therapy. Lykos argues that its training will ensure that boundaries are maintained, but its intervention actually heightens the risks for patients by promoting boundary violations by therapists. Ultimately, the most significant harms in Lykos' clinical trials were not caused by MDMA, but by the people who were entrusted to supervise its administration. When I was preparing for this week's FDA Advisory Committee meeting, I thought that we would just be putting a warning on the official record so that people who got hurt later could access resources for validation and justice. I thought the momentum behind MDMA could not be overcome by a small group of independent scholars, activists, and former trial participants. But on Tuesday, beyond my wildest expectations, we made international news in a dark horse victory that contributed to a sweeping vote of no confidence in Lykos' application. While the FDA still has to make its final decision, the advisory committee outcome sent a message of validation to all the people who've been hurt. Let's be very clear. Lykos bears the responsibility for this decision. Their research should have been ethical and rigorous. The ends do not justify their means. Since these harms are predictable, they are preventable, and preventable harms are never acceptable. Although dominant forces would like you to think their power is inevitable, they often don't notice, in their hubris, how reality is always shifting. Our power isn't from the establishment. It comes through solidarity and from speaking truth to power. In a comment to the FDA, one Lykos supporter dismissed me as just a professional writer. But I made history this week because I'm a writer, an educator, an ethicist, a poet. I noticed a chink in the armor of a giant machine, and I fired the petition as a poisoned dart, as poetic technology and a force of creation. Through language, we can take control of the construct, changing the conditions of possibility for new realities in the present. This opposition to Lykos came from within the psychedelic field. I work in psychedelic science, but this is psychedelic humanities. Thank you.